Melania Trump was so criticized for using what turned out to be a portion of your speech. But do you have any sympathy? Because there are people around her creating things, and, you know, I have some sympathy for her. Do you understand how that might be sympathetic for what happened to her?
Yeah, that was tough.
So let me be as honest and clear as I possibly can. Donald Trump is the wrong president for our country. He has had more than enough time to prove that he can do the job, but he is clearly in over his head. He cannot meet this moment. He simply cannot be who we need him to be for us. It is what it is.
Michelle Obama stepped onto a live stage, looked straight into the camera, and said the quiet parts about Donald Trump out loud. Not with rage, not with theatrics, just with the kind of moral clarity that lands like a gavel. And the person who felt that echo the most was not only Trump, it was Melania Trump, the keeper of elegant silence, the designer of distance, the curator of that cool, untouchable First Lady image that always seemed to float above the mess. Because when Michelle exposed what Trump has been peddling for years, the old Melania playbook stopped working.
Trump that Obama isn't openly criticizing is Melania Trump.
Is the current First Lady, how do you think she is doing in defining who she is?
You know, one of the things you learn as a former, it's like, I don't judge what a current is doing, you know? So I'd prefer not to, you know, speak on what she's doing versus what I did.
And although Obama hosted Trump for a brief welcome tea at the White House after the election, telling her that she was available for advice anytime should Trump need her, Obama's phone has remained silent.
I know that Laura Bush reached out to you and said, if you need any help, I'm a phone call away.
Yep.
You wrote about how, and have talked about how you extended that same courtesy to Melania Trump. Has she reached out to you and asked for any help?
No, she hasn't.
The distance stopped looking like sophistication and started looking like evasion. The brand couldn't hold its own weight anymore, and you could see the seams start to split in real time. If you support Michelle Obama over Trump, hit that subscribe button because we are in the same team, and do no forget to like the video. Michelle didn't invent the case against Trump, she distilled it. For years, she held her fire, choosing hope and restraint while the other side hurled whatever stuck.
I hope that you'll forgive me if I'm a little angry that we are indifferent to his erratic behavior, his obvious mental decline, his history as a convicted felon, a known slumlord, a predator found liable for sexual abuse, all of this, while we pick apart Kamala's answers from interviews that he doesn't even have the courage to do, y'all.
But every once in a while, she has walked onto a national broadcast and said the exact sentence that slices through the noise. She has done it about empathy. She has done it about leadership. She has done it about the way power turns petty when it runs on fear. When she called out Trump's ugly habit of playing racial politics and flipped his own words back on him, the room felt it. It was not just a clapback, it was a mirror. It reflected the kind of smallness that Trump tries to sell as strength.
When making life or death, war or peace decisions, a president just can't pop off or lash out irrationally. No, we need an adult in the White House. So if a candidate is erratic and threatening, if a candidate traffics in prejudice, fears, and lies on the campaign trail, if a candidate thinks that not paying taxes makes you smart, or that it's good business when people lose their homes, if a candidate regularly and flippantly makes cruel and insulting comments about women, about how we look, how we act, well, sadly, that's who that candidate really is. Because we know that being president isn't anything like reality TV. It is not an apprenticeship. And it is not just about fiery speeches or insulting tweets. It's about whether someone can handle the awesome responsibility of leading this country.
It asked a simple question. If this is your vision of America, "Why are you so afraid of Americans?" That is the kind of line you cannot drown out with volume. That is the kind of line that follows you into the next news cycle and the next, because it sticks to the truth like a magnet. Now put Melania next to that moment. For years, her strategy has been the soft shoe. Few words, smooth images, the aura of a person too refined to wrestle with the rest of us. Her defenders always say she is private, she is reserved, she is above the fray.
That's just fake news. When you say that, darling, that's fake news.
Well, why would
I
the
don't go to
Department of
war.
Defense?
Listen, be quiet. Listen. You don't listen. You never listen. That's why you're second rate. We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our cities. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense.
Mr. President, how is your
Are you ready?
The president and his allies are trying to tap into that frustration and distract from his breathtaking failures by giving folks someone to blame other than them. They're stoking fears about Black and brown Americans, lying about how minorities will destroy the suburbs, whipping up violence and intimidation, and they're pinning it all on what's been an overwhelmingly peaceful movement for racial solidarity. It's true. Research backs it up. Only a tiny fraction of demonstrations have had any violence at all. So what the president is doing is once again patently false. It's morally wrong. And yes, it is racist. But that doesn't mean it won't work.
But privacy is not the same as principle. When the cameras are rolling and the stakes are not abstract, silence becomes a choice the audience gets to judge. And the audience remembers the greatest hits. They remember the anti-bullying campaign rolled out with glossy graphics while her husband was online hurling insults day and night. They remember the trip to a Texas facility for migrant children and the jacket that shouted a question that did not belong on the back of any public servant on that particular day. They remember the convention speech that matched someone else's words so closely, the side-by-side clips went viral within minutes.
Thinking about this, it has shaken me to my core in a way that I couldn't have predicted.
Michelle Obama delivering a blistering rebuke of Donald Trump and his crude comments about women.
It would be dishonest and disingenuous to me to just move on to the next thing like this was all just a bad dream. This is not something that we can ignore. It's not something we can just sweep under the rug as just another disturbing footnote in a sad election season.
She's weighing in with an unusually pointed and personal denunciation of Trump. A call to arms for women, men, and, she said, basic human decency.
We all know that if we let Hillary's opponent win this election, then we are sending a clear message to our kids that everything they're seeing and hearing is perfectly okay. We are validating it.
A coordinated message with Hillary Clinton.
I hope you will see Michelle Obama's speech today in New Hampshire. And once again, she not only made a compelling and strong case about the stakes in the election, but about who we are as Americans.
They remember the body language that said more than any press release ever could, like the time a hand reached out and a hand pulled away on an airport tarmac. These are not conspiracies. These are public moments. They live in the national memory because they were televised, replayed, and etched into the story of an administration that always chose spectacle over substance. Here is where the gears grind. Michelle walks out and lays down a moral ledger, and suddenly the Melania mystique has to answer for the gaps.
For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of 2 hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be Black. I want to know, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those Black jobs?
What does it mean to preach kindness while standing next to cruelty? What does it mean to market a slogan about being your best self while the person you share a stage with is mocking people by name? What does it mean to visit children in distress and treat the moment like a costume change? You can say nothing. You can say it was misunderstood. You can say it was about the media, about critics, about anything except what everyone saw. But when someone like Michelle puts words to the harm and does it live,
With your support on November 5th, you know what's nasty to me? Michelle Obama. always tried to be so nice and respectful. Oh, she opened up a little bit of a box. She opened up a little bit of something. Oh, she was nasty. Ooh. Shouldn't be that way. That was a big mistake that she made. With your support on November 5th, we will achieve success that no one can imagine. We will have the strongest economy, the most secure borders, the safest cities, the most powerful military, the best trade deals. We will dominate the frontiers of science, medicine, business, technology, and space.
Is that it looks like the federal government, which is entirely controlled by the Republican Party, is going to shut down in about 20 minutes. Anything?
The excuses start to sound like echoes in an empty room. And yes, part of this is marriage theater, because that has always been the Trump brand. He floods the zone. He occupies every frame. He picks fights and calls it bravery. She floats on the edges, carefully curated, almost ghost-like, during the ugliest weeks, appearing just enough to remind you she is still there. For a while, that division of labor worked. He ate the headlines. She preserved the mystery.
Do you have any sympathy for the people who have to go there and stand by the person running for president?
No, not really.
No?
No, because if, you have to be, in it. If you're in it, and if you don't agree, you should have agreed before they ran.
She also appeared in this hilarious sketch.
If you got stuck on a desert island with one famous person, who'd you pick?
Oh, I'd pick the president. How about you?
Beyonce.
But mystery is brittle when the story turns into a referendum on basic decency. When the question is not policy but character, the person standing closest to the blast zone is going to be asked where they stand. And if the answer, again and again, is a shrug, people will fill that silence with something that is not flattering. Here's where I want you in the conversation. Which moment shattered the facade for you? Was it the jacket? Was it the hand swat? Was it the speech that sounded like a remix? Was it the months when she was nowhere to be found while the campaign machine told the country who counts and who does not?
Too many are treating this as just another day's headline, as if our outrage is overblown or unwarranted, as if this is normal, just politics as usual. This is disgraceful. It is intolerable. And it doesn't matter what party you belong to.
All this as hacked emails from the Clinton campaign continue to muddy the waters, portraying the painstaking calculations behind nearly every move, even sending out a tweet signed by Hillary Clinton herself.
Drop the moment that made you say, enough, in the comments. I want to see which scenes you think belong in the final edit, because that is how we build a record that cannot be gaslit away. Let's talk about hypocrisy, not as a buzzword, but as a pattern you can map. If you market anti-bullying while enabling the biggest bully on the stage, that is hypocrisy. If you present yourself as a defender of children and then turn a humanitarian visit into a cynical message about not caring, that is hypocrisy.
That jacket was really the first representation of Melania going on her own in her office saying, it's just a jacket. It's anything but just a jacket.
So in other words, just so I understand this, that was an attention-grabbing stunt that she intentionally did because she knew it would get the press's attention.
Right, and I don't think she realized that it would get the negative attention.
How could she not know that a jacket that says she doesn't care as she goes to see children wouldn't get
Because
negative?
the interpretation that I took from it, again, just from someone knowing her, was, oh my God, Melania, why didn't your office just come out and say, I don't care what liberals say, I don't care what conservatives say, I don't care what anybody says. I'm doing the right thing and I'm going to the border. That's the messaging, because I do think deep in her heart, that was there, but it got so convoluted and nobody communicates, nobody really cares to help her cover. What's entirely wrong. Doesn't matter. The reality is she wore it to get attention. How I perceived it was because of how I viewed her as a friend.
If you champion integrity at a convention and the most memorable thing about that night is how closely your prose tracks someone else's, that is hypocrisy. The point is not to relitigate old headlines. The point is to explain why Michelle's live television takedown hits so hard. She didn't drag the conversation into the mud. She pulled it out and held it under bright lights. She reminded the country that leadership is not a brand or a mood or a well-lit photo. It is a series of choices you make when the cameras are on and when they are not.
probably, I have to admit, as much as we would all love to know, you're right about that. Michelle also opened up, though, about being the first black first lady. Here's what she said about that.
So there were people who didn't know what a black woman was and sounded like. And so I knew that was going to be a challenge, that I'd have to earn my grace. People called me Barack's baby's mama, accused me of not loving my country, told me I was angry. And that was the first time I really experienced someone taking my voice and balling it up and distorting it. It was like, this isn't me. Wait, people. This isn't who I am.
Melania's choices over time land where they land. They land on the side of appearances over accountability. They land on the side of distance over clarity. They land on the side of a speechless shrug when a voice would have actually mattered. There is also the simple reality that the public is more media literate than the people on stage think. Voters can spot a carefully managed image. They can tell the difference between a person who refuses to dignify nonsense and a person who refuses to get involved.
My decision to skip the inauguration, what people don't realize, or my decision to make choices at the beginning of this year that suited me were met with such ridicule and criticism. Like, people couldn't believe that I was saying no for any other reason, that they had to assume that my marriage was falling apart.
Right.
It's like, while I'm here really trying to own my life and intentionally practice making the choice that was right for me, and it took everything in my power to not do the thing that was right, or that was perceived as right, but do the thing that was right for me. That was a hard thing for me to do.
They can feel the chill of someone who has made neutrality their brand while the stakes require a stance. That is why the word collapse fits. Not a collapse of a person, a collapse of cover. The years of floating above the mess only work if no one insists on talking about the mess in plain English. Michelle insisted. She did not need to yell. She did not need to insult. She made the case like an adult talking to adults, and the second she did, Melania's quiet was no longer an aesthetic.
And his willful mismanagement of the COVID crisis is just one example of his negligence. As a black woman who has, like the overwhelming majority of people of color in this nation, done everything in my power to live a life of dignity and service and honesty, the knowledge that any of my fellow Americans is more afraid of me than the chaos we are living through right now, well, that hurts. It hurts us all. It is a heaviness that sits on our hearts. So I want to appeal for some empathy here too. I want everyone who is still undecided to think about all those folks like me and my ancestors. The moms and dads who worked their fingers to the bone to raise their kids right. The teenagers who wear hoodies while working hard to get their diplomas. The millions of folks who look like me and fought and died and toiled as slaves and soldiers and laborers to help build this country. Put yourselves in our shoes for just a moment. Imagine how it feels to wake up every day and do your very best to uphold the values that this country claims to hold dear. Truth, honor, decency, only to have those efforts met by scorn, not just by your fellow citizens, but by a sitting president.
And Melania's record is a series of decisions to stay silent while the harm was narrated out loud by the person she stood next to. Maybe that was self-preservation. Maybe that was strategy. Maybe that was genuine indifference. Whatever the motive, the effect is the same in the public square. The curtain opened. The set was wobbly. The audience saw the plywood and tape. They heard a grown-up tell the truth, and the show could not go on the same way again. Now tell me your read. Did Michelle's live takedown feel like the first time the image cracked for good? Or was your breaking point long before, somewhere between the borrowed speech and the jacket that never should have been worn? Drop it below. Keep it sharp, keep it honest, because we are building the kind of comment section that embarrasses lazy talking points. If you are watching on Instagram, please follow. If you are watching on YouTube, Please subscribe to America Facticity for more breaking news.